So, the last time I made one of these videos, it's been a while, I was starting to explore the concepts of narcissism and egoism as relationship to attachment disorders, and exploring how narcissistic tendencies tend to fall in the dismissive avoidant side, and egoism tends to fall in the anxious attachment side. But since then, I have done so much research and so much reading, basically because of my approach to relationships, and this is just, romantic relationships and friendships and family dynamics that I was noticing within myself, and coming to some conclusions about me and my attachment style, and maybe, the tendency of why INFJs might kind of have sort of a similar attachment style that I do. Now, your MBTI, your Myers-Briggs, if you know anything about that, that's not really something necessarily that is a nurture component. I think there is a nurture component to it that the things that are kind of laid as groundwork as far as your cognitive processing, they do kind of get enhanced through nurture, but that groundwork is kind of laid down ahead of time. So I think if you're an INFJ, you will tend on having a certain attachment style just because of the way that you show up in your relationships, and I mean any relationships. So I'm going to start with a little bit about how INFJs generally interact with other people, and I think then I'm going to lead it to what I've discovered about my attachment style and why I feel like why I am the way that I am, and maybe like why other INFJs and this will help other personality types to understand their attachment style if they are in line with this. So, as an INFJ, one of the things that you have, that how you interact with the external world, is extroverted feeling, which means you really deeply know what is going on the feelings level of other people. And then on the other side of it, you have you have internal thinking in your third slot. So you have this logical internal processing. So you can really you can use your intuition to pull in all this information, and you can understand how people are feeling, and then you can think through inside and really understand the roots of where that feeling is coming from. So it's like an insanely powerful tool to really get to the roots of what is going on in some other individual. And you do all of this just naturally. This is just how you are. This is how you show up in the world. And as a mature adult, I understand what's going on, and I'm a bit able to balance all these other pieces by using my child function, which is, by growing my child function. I think that is what helps me kind of balance all the others, and that's extroverted sensing. So it's really important for me to ground myself in the present, and that can be through exercise, through yoga, through meditation, anything that allows you to focus on what is happening right now instead of kind of spinning off in other directions and getting in loops of overthinking and stuff like that. So that is something that just has to happen. Like, for anybody that has extroverted feeling, I think you're all in the emotions of others, and particularly intuitives who are forward-thinking individuals. Grounding yourself in the present is really something that you just have to do to be a balanced person. So, but getting back to the first thing, as a child, you are doing this, understanding other people's feelings and knowing the roots of them. You have a natural tendency to make other people feel comfortable. What happens is that, in my case, and I think other cases, as a very early young person, you are going to be experiencing other people's feelings hugely, which can be very disruptive internally. And you are also going to be sometimes seen as a threat, because people can know that you understand and that you see what is going on with them internally. That can cause people to take out stuff on you, and it's not intentional most of the time. It's just they have all this stuff, and they are looking to throw it at somebody, and here is this creature that is just can see, and it's crazy. I never thought of myself as a child as threatening, and it's not that you are. It's just that you can tell what's going on, and without much information, and that can seem disconcerting to people, and they want to push it away. So they're going to direct some stuff towards you, and so the other piece of this is not just directing stuff towards you, but also there are other individuals, and in my case it would be a parental figure, and I think this happens not just parental figures, but parent type or caregiver type relationships, where they start to see this child that is so intuitive and feelings focused as like emotional support. And so there's can be this like oversharing of information, as in my case, oversharing of really sensitive information to a child that is not capable of processing the level of stuff that is being given to them. So it's like this real boundary crossing kind of relationship from parent to child. So this kind of leads me to the attachment disorder that I feel like is most associated with INFJs, and this is the fearful avoidant attachment disorder. And honestly, when I started researching attachment disorders, this was the one that I was like terrified of. I mean, I just looked at it. It's also called disorganized attachment disorder. Basically, it's a mixture of anxious attachment and dismissive or avoidant attachment in the same person. And the coping mechanisms for keeping themselves safe in relationships, you utilize both avoidant tendencies and anxious attached. So basically what you manifest as a person is like you want relationships, you want to connect really deeply, you want to be with people, and so you like pull them close, and you may overgive, and you know this tends to be a very empathetic person, and you want them to be close to you, you want them to like you, you want, you know, like attachment, and like in a sort of like giving way. But there can be, and there tends to be, and in my case, this only happens in romantic relationships, because like the intimacy gets to a point where it does trigger attachment wounds from childhood. So there can be a point where you get super close to a person, and what happens is that your avoidant attachment style kind of kicks in. And so then you like, it feels too much, and you kind of pull back, and you kind of, kind of keep stuff inside, and you kind of lock stuff down, and you don't share stuff that's going on in you emotionally, and basically you just kind of want to give yourself distance from the other person. But this can kind of like fluctuate back and forth in somebody that has this attachment style. And on low levels, I can tell you anecdotally, like, what has happened to me is that I really have like a high, like a really big barrier about letting people kind of, my stomach is like super growling, and I'm hoping you don't hear that. I really have a big barrier in letting people kind of close to me, because I know that the anxious, the giving stuff kind of can like is there. So I'm really like hyper aware. So if I meet somebody in, a public setting, like just a stranger or whatever, and they automatically start opening up to me, because this happens to me all the time, because I think of my, extroverted feeling thing. So I will like listen to them, and I will be happy to take in information that they're giving me if they're telling me things. But if they start asking me questions about myself, that is when my like dismissive stuff kicks in, and like they're not wanting to like establish any kind of like relationship with me necessarily, but I feel like no. Like I will then this happened to me in airport, I will then like kind of like dismiss myself, like I'm going to the bathroom or something, and then like not come back, and like look really busy, and try to like go somewhere else, and just like avoid that person altogether. So this is like my dismissive avoidant, like my avoidance stuff. It's like, okay, you started asking me questions about myself. I was okay when it was all about you, but now you want to know about me, and I'm not okay with that. And I will like, I'm out. So yeah, that's like kind of a bit of what I feel like inside in a low level kind of interaction. But in like a more closer interaction, like I notice that when I hug family members, that like, or they hug me, there's like this, like I want the hug, and it's good, but then there's like this like point where all of a sudden I'm kind of like reached a tolerance of like, I can't, like I don't want this hug anymore, like, and immediately I just want to be out of that hug. And it's not like this hug is like a long hug or like a really intimate hug or whatever. It's just like I reach a point like in my nervous system where I'm like, I need to separate, like I need space. And so this is something that happens in the fearful avoidant kind of personality type. I think you'll see this manifesting in INFJs a lot, like just in general in their relationships, because like they want closeness, they want, to be with you, they want to know everything about you. And then as soon as it's like anything about them, or like they feel like they have reached a point where they've given a lot, because they give a lot, then they'll retreat like. And this will be like pretty, and then people be like, where did they go? Like, what happened? You'll go back into your hidey hole and live there for, days, doing whatever you do. And then you come back out, and it's just like this, it's the fearful avoidant attachment style. And it just seems to be how INFJs kind of like function. But yeah, here's the thing. I don't think like by changing or adjusting your attachment style, you're really going to like change your personality type. You're not. I think you're just going to be more aware of the tendencies that kind of surround it. So, yeah, so like I also kind of wanted to speak to how my fearful avoidance stuff has kind of shown up in relationship in the past, and I think and currently I have coffee, so I haven't had enough coffee today, so so boundaries, because of all of the stuff that happened as a child, and you know, your parent kind of like oversharing or caregiver oversharing, or you know, in the fearful avoidant, sometimes there's like a crossing of boundaries, of physical boundaries. It manifests itself. This is a more volatile fearful avoidant type. Like this person might have a pushback that, you know, when they go to a retreat mode, they might have a more like aggressive pushback, like a, you know, like an actual like attack sort of a style when they, right before they pull back, like a real sharp shove. But you know, if you haven't had like that kind of trauma, if it's just been more like trauma in the home, like there was fighting and a parent was needing you to soothe them, or there was a parent that was kind of oversharing and you know, using you as like an emotional blanket, all of this stuff is boundary crossing, all of it. So as a person, as an adult person, what's the number one thing you're going to struggle with? Boundaries. You are not going to have good boundaries. Why? Because lack of boundaries is what kept you safe. It's what kept you close to your caregiver. You know, your parent using you as an emotional support blanket, or your caretaker using this. You dropped your boundaries so that you can feel connected, so you could feel safe. If you were, you know, physically attacked by the person that was supposed to be caring to you, you know, you were getting your boundaries crossed by a person that was supposed to make you feel safe. Like it's not really your fault that you have bad boundaries. Like it was your coping mechanism. So when people always say like, you know, they just, as like general advice, like if you want to have a healthier life, you know, like, and a healthier relationships, just like be better at boundaries. You cannot be better at boundaries if you don't work on your attachment style. You can like cognitively say, I need to set a boundary. You don't even like know how that will work. Like it's impossible to just be like, I'm going to be better at boundaries. And yeah, you can't, it's just not how it works. So okay, so I guess I should probably say like, I did say how the fearful avoidance stuff was going to show up in my relationships. This is like kind of a really long video, but basically, you know, I had a really long relationship that ended. I've been through a divorce, and I was also really confused in that relationship, and why I felt like I wasn't being seen or understood. And I was with somebody who I now understand, and he now understands. This is kind of, all this stuff has kind of been revolutionary to like us understanding ourselves. And I've been facilitating that educational piece for my ex, because growth is kind of like a thing. Well, for most INFJ, it's just an obsession. So we have a very voracious appetite for self-growth stuff. Anyways, I was with a dismissive avoidant. Basically somebody who like literally hoards all of their like resources in every single aspect because they just don't feel like there's enough ever. And like they don't even know that other people have needs. They didn't even know that needs exist. Like this is something that has been huge. Something that has been huge, revolutionary for my dismissive avoidant. Like didn't walked around in the world thinking that everybody is taking care of themselves. Everybody should take care of themselves. There's no reason why anybody should ask anything of anybody else. That is who I was married to, and he is working on that. But as a fearful avoidant, and I'm leaning on the anxious side of the fearful avoidant, what does that look like? Well, you really have a hard time expressing your needs because it feels really vulnerable. Why? Because like that wasn't your role. Like you were the caretaker. You were taking care of other people's needs like all the time. And you didn't have boundaries. So when you're dismissive avoidant or who, your partner, it may not be a dismissive avoidant. It's usually they're like asserting their what they feel is right. Like they don't even know that you have anything going on with you, and your needs, like they don't even really factor into any decision making. They just like do their thing, and you're just like an obstruction. Like why do you even like? Why are you not on the same page? Like this is, and so you kind of feel steamrolled. So they don't even think that, they don't even realize that like you might have any needs like different. And so, you have bad at boundaries. So so not only you're scared to be vulnerable, you're bad at boundaries, you're going to allow this person to just run you over. And but it doesn't go away. You kind of that's like the anxious side of it. You want to make that person feel good. You want to give. You want to make them feel happy. So you're doing that. And then, but like, as the fearful avoidant, you're not like communicating this stuff or at all. Like you're not saying, like this, like the little things that are really like crossing your boundaries until like you've now reached a point where, things have been stored up, and the fearful avoidant, what will happen in that case is a big push, like a big shove back, like you've now become way too close, like I've given up all of my stuff, I'm now ready to like retreat. So you create space. And in the past, and I'm gonna say, like, I have realized this, like, how did I manifest space? Volatility. I know that I completely let things build up and got super duper aggressive towards my partner because I felt violated and I didn't communicate that, and now I needed space to feel safe. So I aggressively said things and to like push this person away. But this comes to be kind of like a cycle, especially if you're with a person that doesn't kind of understand their attachment style either. And what it looks like is, for the dismissive avoidant, and I'm going to say, is like you are placing all of your emotional baggage on me. Like, why do I need to carry your emotional baggage? I'm not your parent. I have my own needs. You definitely like I'm not responsible for that. And like that is not something I want to be around. And so like they pull back, and the dismissive avoidant, like the one that I was with, was not like it was like he was like an introvert. It wasn't like a real, like when he pulled back, it wasn't like and aggressive, but it was more like a shutting down. So like a, you know, a pulling in, a shutting down, like a silent treatment, physically leaving the space, just like kind of isolating themselves. They don't feel bad about this. They do not feel bad about this. They feel like by doing this, they are protecting their connection to you. It makes no sense from my perspective, that somebody leaving when I was in an unregulated state is them trying to preserve the relationship. That makes no sense to me, but it makes a lot of sense to them. And I think if you ask any dismissive avoidant, they would say, I left because I didn't want to fight, and I wanted to make sure that like we didn't get into a fight. They wanted to keep the peace by just leaving. But what that does for the fearful avoidant is trigger their anxious state. And then you get into this, like panicky, like, oh my God, they're leaving me. I'm getting disconnected. What do I do? You know, so you like enter into the clingy stage again. And this just happens. Like this cycle just happens over and over again. And like, I hear you. This is like, it sounds awful. This dynamic sounds awful, and it is pretty unhealthy. But it doesn't mean that there is no like hope for you as a person. I think that for me personally, knowing who I am, I really got to be careful getting into a relationship with somebody that isn't secure, first off, and somebody that's dismissive, avoidant attachment style. Is going to be very difficult for me to work with, because as a fearful avoidant, expressing my needs feels really unsafe. I know that I need to work on that, and I am working on that, and there's ways to get about doing that. I think I probably should do that in a different video because this is getting pretty long, but yeah, so it's going to be much more challenging to be in a relationship with somebody that already doesn't feel like anybody else has needs, and like you're going to have to, with that person, express your needs over and over and over again. They really don't get it, and until they do their work on their attachment style, they just won't get it. And so for a person that really has a hard time expressing their needs, and that feels very vulnerable, it's going to be very difficult to be in a relationship with somebody like that. So I you know, as myself, you know, working on things that kind of make me towards a more secure attachment style are really what I need to do to make sure that I get into a relationship that is right for me. And also, you know, this isn't just romantic relationships. Like, note that I mentioned something about family relationships and also friend relationships. You showing up and being all about the other person and then pulling back, like, and retreating for, you know, whatever time it takes you to retreat. And like, you know, I know in the past, in my dismissive state, I've like ignored text. I've like, you know, really distanced myself at times when I thought I was recovering. And I was recovering, but it didn't have to be so extreme. You know what I mean? So it didn't have to be. If I was communicating up front, first off, like, you know, communicating of what my boundaries are, like being, like regulating up front of how much I can invest in any particular, you know, interaction. And then communicating that, you know, when I'm in my, you know, withdrawn state or whatever, of like what's going on with me, I think I would have had better friendships. I think there's friendships that I wouldn't have lost. I definitely think that there are people that I cut out, that I wouldn't have cut out, and this kind of leads to that whole like door slam kind of a thing, that is another associated with the INFJ stuff. So like, it's not just in romantic relationships. It's like every single relationship. Your relationship with your kids, if you have kids, making sure that you don't manifest these patterns in them because you're like present and then you're not present, and you know, not perpetuating these behaviors. And it's it's not just about romantic relationships. If you're single, or if you're like in a relationship and you're seeing these things show up, knowing why. And like, also, just as a final note, like, I just want to just say this because it is really not very awesome a lot of times to look at yourself and see the parts of you that like aren't the way that you optimally want them to be. But please, like, just recognize that I said a lot of stuff about how this happened as a child and how it was used to keep you safe. So like, this stuff is not your fault if this is the way that you are and it has caused you problems. It was not your doing in your childhood of what happened. It was somebody else that was working out their stuff on you, and because they didn't have what they needed. So try not to have harsh judgment on yourself if this is how you're showing up in your relationships, because it was what you needed to keep yourself safe. It was what you needed to survive. It was critical to you as a young person to be able to function and get through. So yes, it's not a place you want to stay, probably, if this is how you are, and you're looking to change or looking to understand how your relationships have been. But it's not something that, one, can't be changed, and it's also not something that, you know, entirely had negative implications to it. You do have the insane ability to really know people so well, and that is a really great thing to have. You make people feel safe. You make people want to share things with you. So that is a really great thing to have. And it's not going to go away because you work on your attachment style. That's just going to be who you are, because you are an INFJ, and or you are an extroverted feeler. That is your gift to the world. So, and it is your superpower. So know that, and be gentle with yourself if you're in the place that I'm at, and realizing that you have some stuff that probably hasn't worked well for you, and you'd like to do something different. Just, approach it carefully. All these things can be adjusted. It takes time, but what else is better than working on yourself to have better relationships? The one thing that you really desire as any human being is to have strong connections with other people. And yeah, I think so. It's possible, and it's not a terribly awful process and a beat yourself up kind of a thing. It's a gentle moving forward with what is going to be best for you as a human being in this world. So that's just what I wanted to say, and this video is kind of longer than I expected, and it kind of split into two parts, and I hope I can merge it together. But yeah, so this is all that I found out, and I think I'll keep going and updating as I go along. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you when I learn more.